But so if anyone's got any questions, please just shout.
I can see a chat facility as well, so type them in the chat.
Type them in the chat, yeah, exactly, yeah. So it's so what we're going to do is just to briefly cover a little bit about the IFOA, who the IFOA is, and so a little bit about sort of actual practice in the UK and the sort of IFOA's membership. And then we'll sort of talk through a bit about the IFOA qualifications. Andrew mentioned that it'd be interesting to talk through about sort of whether you could sort of transfer credits between the SOA and CAS and the IFOA. We'll cover a bit about that, and then we'll also talk about not only are we sort of developing our own fellowship examinations, we're also looking at developing a lot of other forms of education as well, particularly with data science and climate change. I think that we'll talk about that in a second. And at the very end, we'll have a sort of Q&A. So, I mean, first of all, who are the IFOA? Is this not moving? Here we go. Right. So, the IFOA, it's the UK's only sort of chartered professional body that educates and regulates actuaries. It was formed in 2010 from merger of the Institute and Faculty of Actuaries. So the Institute of Actuaries in England and the Faculty of Actuaries in Scotland, but two very, very sort of long-established organisations. So the Institute was established in 1848 and the faculty just slightly after. So they've been about for a long time. And there's a lot of sort of actual history around both of them. At the moment, we've got about 34,000 members in 80 countries. So it's not purely just the UK. If you look at where the membership is based, roughly about half of the members are based in the UK, and then half are based outside the UK. So, a large number in India, a large number in China, Africa, Southeast Asia, Ireland, and the rest of the world. There's just, as I said, there's, I think it's in the last time I looked, there's about 80 different countries around the world. So it's a very, very sort of diverse membership, which is can only be a good thing, to be honest. We certainly get a chance to sort of engage with members just all over the world, and it's so we find it very interesting, anyways, and I certainly do. In terms of where do the members work, I'm not going to go through every single country, but I thought it'd be useful to see from a UK perspective where the sort of UK membership works. So really, the main sort of key areas of practice, actuarial practice, so life assurance, pensions, general insurance, investment, that is where actuaries work. In the UK generally at the moment, with pensions. I didn't actually realize it myself until I looked at the numbers. There's actually more. Pensions is the largest by numbers, but very closely followed by life insurance, and general insurance is a sort of good chunk of actuaries there. But it is diverse. There's sort of members doing all sorts of things, to be honest. Everything from sort of IT, sustainability, all that sort of stuff as well. And hopefully in the future we'll see more members working outside the traditional sort of key areas of actual practice. How is the membership split? So the membership is split roughly 50-50 between just slightly more fellows than students and associates, but it's roughly 50-50 between fellows and students and associates. So it's not just a sort of aging profession. There's lots of sort of new blood coming to the profession as well. And now, so briefly, going to go. I'll also introduce the sort of fellowship examination pathway, and then I'll pass it across to Sally. So, the path to qualifications. So that the key thing from a student's perspective is how do I get to be an actuary. So the pathway, there's two sort of pathways. There's the associateship, which takes you so far, and the fellowship, which takes you all the way to being a fellow, qualified actuary. The associateship is the sort of core principles exams, and I'll let Sally go through these in a second. Also in the core applications, which these are really just a sort of core sort of bedrock of becoming an actuary, sort of stats and actual maths and things like that. And then the sort of later part of it to take you to fellowship are the specialist principles and the specialist advanced, which are the sort of your general insurance or life papers and sort of specialist level, principles level and advanced level. And on top of that, there's this professional development as well, which Sally will go through. So Sally, are you keen to take over?
Absolutely great. Thanks, Colin. So first of all, we'll have a look at the associateship exams in terms of what they are, and then I'll talk about the format later on. So as you can see, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 associateship exams. The C stands for core, and so you've got at the top left there, you've got your actuarial statistics, so that's your probability distributions, your compound distributions. So that's core statistics 1 and 2. Actuarial maths, which is your calculating annuities, compound interest, life contingencies, calculating life insurance premiums in simple situations. So that's CM 1 and 2, core mathematics. Then going over to business, you've got your core business 1, 2, and 3. So you've got finance and economics, which doesn't go into it in a kind of really deep level. So it's not like we're training actuaries to be economists, but we want our members to have a sort of broad idea of what macroeconomics is, what microeconomics is, how companies are structured, how do you compare companies to each other with different profit margins and that kind of thing. The business management, that's looking at sort of broader ideas about business strategy, perhaps sort of basic legal awareness. Again, we don't want people to be sort of strategic experts in business or legal experts. It's just to give our members enough of a flavour for the wider world around sort of the world in which they work. You've then got your core practice exams, CP1, 2, and 3. So you've got actuarial practice, which looks at sort of real life situations that the actuaries might face in a business environment. Actuarial modelling, which is not a modelling exam. What it is that the exam is testing if you set up a model in the office, can you set it up in a way that someone can follow what you've done, someone can understand what you've done, understand your reasoning. So have you left a nice clear audit trail so someone can pick up that model and work with it without having to spend hours and hours. CP3 communication practice is basically saying, can you as actuaries or as associates communicate to people who don't understand the technical niceties? So can you basically string a decent sentence together and answer the question that the client wants in a way in which they're going to understand what you're saying? So that's what the exams are. So the next slide is going to show a bit about the actual format of the exams. So for our core stats and our core maths exams, there's 2 papers. There's a written paper, which is written questions, so you'll be asked a question and then you have to write the answer actually in a Word document. And then there's a second paper, which is called a practical problem-based computer-based exam. So for our core stats exam, that is using the R software. So we'll get our students to model some data and perhaps produce some stats and graphs on that using R, and then paste their results into their Word document, and that's their script, as it were. And in the CM exams, it's practical exams using Excel. So we might get them to calculate a premium using a sort of a long string of mortality rates, or we might give them a whole mass of interest rates dating back 20 years and get them to calculate some returns on that. So it's the sort of questions which might lend themselves quite nicely to computers rather than pen and paper. Our core business exams, CD1 and 2, so that's the economics and accounts, it's a 3-hour paper. It's about a third multiple choice questions. You pick one of 4 options, pick the right one, hopefully, and then some longer questions, which are sort of 5, 10 mark, 20 mark questions, which sort of delve into macroeconomics and the principles in a little bit more detail. And finally, we've got CB3. It's an online assessment where the candidates will work in groups, and they'll work on a series of case studies and work through some online modules. So that's those. So on the next slide, we'll just say a little bit about use of R. So this was introduced in 2019 when we did a big kind of overview of the curriculum to make sure it was sort of fit for purpose. And the reason why we introduced it was because a lot of employers were saying, well, look, we're using R a lot in our analysis. A lot of universities were saying that we're using it, and we were sort of thinking, actually, it's a really great tool. It's used a lot. It's highly relevant. So we're going to get our candidates to use it just to see that they can, they work out how it works and they can analyze some data on that. So, and it uses the open source software environment. And yeah, we've got a lovely little link there. So if you want to sort of know any more about R, just check that link on the website. If you go on the website and just type actuarial statistics or type use of R, the search function should come up with that. And there's plenty of specimen practical exams and past papers for not only for our CS exams, but for all of our exams are available on the Institute Faculty of Actuaries website. You don't need to log in as a member. It's just there's no kind of firewall or paywall behind it. So if you just go into the website and type past exams, it'll all come up with a link, and you can get a feel for what our exams look like. Okay, so we'll now move on to our the kind of core application exams, which are the practice exams. So CP1 is more the sort of practical problems that you might face in a business environment. So it's more kind of case study type questions. It's 2 papers. The first paper is shorter questions that are kind of 10, 20 marks each. So I expect you to spend about half an hour on each of those questions. And then the second paper is much longer case study type questions. So you'll get some kind of big scenarios that might ask you, tell you a bit about a company. It might tell you about the kind of perhaps the kind of products that it writes, the kind of life insurance products that it writes, for example. They might tell you a little bit about the environment within which the company works. And then the questions will present a number of practical problems and we'll ask you to solve them. So lots of kind of what if scenarios. So what if the equity market falls? How would you deal with that in this particular environment? And that kind of thing, to really kind of prepare you for practical work as an actuary. The CP2 exam is split into 2 papers. So the first paper is you've got an Excel model that you have to build from scratch. You normally have to model some data, perhaps check the data to make sure if any data items look a bit odd, what would you do with them? How would you change them to make sure they're fit for purpose? So what you have to do in that is set up your model and set up a lovely audit trail, so that again, someone looking at that model for the first time can work out really quickly what's going on, how you built the model, how can you check the model. The second paper is you're given another model to maybe update it, just make a few changes, perhaps change the interest rate, change some of the parameters, and you'll be asked to construct some charts based on the results from that model and write a brief summary report. So it's kind of communication, but you're communicating to sort of colleagues and actuaries in the office, so you don't have to worry about your language in terms of avoiding jargon or anything like that. It's just how would you document your model, document your results and your conclusions from that model in the office. So it's very, very practical exam. And the CP3 exam is you're given some pre-reading 3 days before the exam. So that tells you a little bit about the scenario in which the question is set. So, and that's just to give a level playing field. So if you have an actuary who's working in one specialism and they're not that familiar with the background and the specialism within which this CP3 question is set, you give them 3 or 4 days to sort of look it up and sort of check that they understand all the technical terms that are there. And then there'll be an exam scenario, which is given 3 days later. You'll be given the exam question and asked to write a letter, a report, or an article, something like that, explaining some kind of technical principle using non-technical language. So that's our core exams. So what we'll do now is we'll move on to the fellowship exams. So the earlier exams are the ones that you need to sit and pass to get your associateship. And these are the additional exams that you need for your fellowship. So you need 2 of the specialist principles exams, and we have 8 SP exams. So we've got 1 to 9, but we're missing SP3. There's a historic reason why we're missing that. And they will cover each of the different specialist areas like health and care, pensions. General insurance, we've got 2. So one of them covers general insurance pricing, the other covers reserving. Investment, we've got 2. So one covers kind of corporate finance and the other one covers derivatives, and it's a little bit more mathsy. And at the bottom there, you can see we have our risk management SP exam, SP9, which also, if you happen to sit that enables you to then move on and get a qualification known as CERA, which is the Chartered Enterprise Risk Actuary. So if you fancy being Chief Risk Officer or working in the risk function of a company, then that's highly recommended as one that's relevant for you. So you choose 2 of those, and they cover the broad principles of the specialist areas, but they're not like UK specific or anything like that. It's just the broad underlying principles of how do you calculate life insurance premium, how do you work out the expenses, what are the kind of things that companies need to consider. And then the final layer is the specialist practice, which is kind of the advanced exams. So we've got SA1, SA2, the pensions is SA4, investments SA7, and general insurance is SA3, and you pick one of those. mostly what our students will do is they will pick the one that is relevant to the specialism of the company that they're working in, but you don't have to. It's normally easier if you pick the one in the area in which you work. Okay, so on the next slide, I'll tell you a little bit about the format of a specialist subject. So each of those exam papers is 3 hours and 20 minutes worth of written exams. As I said before, it's not really UK specific, so detailed UK specific legislation and regulation has just been moved into what we call a UK practice module, which you need in order to practice in the UK, which is great. I mean, that's our recognition that we're actually in a global profession, and we're not all UK centric, because half of our members are overseas. And the specialist advanced subjects are a lot less UK focused now. They might still cover perhaps the underlying principles of UK legislation. So perhaps the concept of a state-sponsored pension benefit, or the concept of a central discontinuance fund, or the concept of a taxation scheme. But the exams don't test you directly on any particular regime or practice, because we are a global profession. And we're always monitoring this on a regular basis. We've actually got a big called a learning change program going on at the moment, where we're looking at the whole curriculum. And if we do feel as if there is a new specialism that needs to be added because it's now sort of very common within the profession, then we will add that to the whole the whole shebang, as it were. So for example, I think corporate finance was added because it was a fairly new one. I mean, back in the day, general insurance, I don't think we had a general insurance exam when I started working. That was fairly new, but obviously that's really taken off now, because there's lots of general insurance actuaries. Okay, so let's have a think about the actual exam format itself. So back in the old days, the vast majority of our exams were pen and paper exams. You all went to an exam room, you sat on a wobbly desk, and you wrote your exam papers. That's not really a clear reflection of what happens today in the office. Most people will just type in all their reports and do their work in Word, for example, or Excel. Obviously, it was exacerbated by recent events of the last couple of years. So from April 2020, all of our exams got moved online. And to be honest, that's going to carry on for the foreseeable future online. So it's definitely worth, if you've got any questions at all about the exam system, then if you can see that the link there again on our website, if you go to FAQs, or again in our search bar, just type exams FAQs, that link should come up. One of the concerns we had about online exams was integrity, but actually we're looking into working with a partner which has a massive online platform where there'll be a lot of proctoring going on, a lot of kind of monitoring of students, just to make sure that security and integrity is being maintained. And we're going to make sure the system is robust enough so that if we've got several thousand students that are all accessing it online, the whole system isn't going to crash. So it's definitely a good thing going forward with exams being online. Okay, so that's a bit about the exams. So that the other thing that you need in order to become an associate or a fellow is to demonstrate that you have undertaken some what we call personal and professional development in the workplace. And that's our personal professional development, or PPD. It was also known as work-based skills, in case any of you are sort of aware of what we were doing a few years ago. But it's now called PPD. And basically what individuals have to do is they have to show that they've satisfied a number of competencies under 3 key areas. So the first area there is effective communications. And we've got lots of kind of hints and ideas as to how you can demonstrate the competencies. So under effective communications, I think one of our examples is preparing a presentation and presenting it to some non-actuarial colleagues. So if in the workplace you had to prepare a presentation and deliver it to, I don't know, perhaps some investors in a fund, or perhaps some pension scheme members, and you had to explain some technical concepts to this particular audience, then you're demonstrating that particular competency. Problem solving and decision making, that's, for example, can you manage a project, or can you come to a particular solution by thinking of all of the different stakeholders involved? So can you think about, how is the company going to feel about this solution? What do they want? How can I tailor my advice to the company's needs? Again, that's part of problem solving and decision making. And the third one there is professionalism, which is a whole massive topic on its own. It's basically doing the right thing and sticking to the standards which might be expected of a, of a professional. So that might be things like making sure you've managed a particular conflict of interest. So perhaps if you're advising two parties in a sale and purchase, and if you're advising the purchaser and the vendor, there's probably a bit of a conflict there if you're advising both parties. So you need to make sure you're managing that, and that's part of our professional standards. So a lot of this is stuff that people do in the office anyway, but the whole kind of process of PPD is just making sure that you've explicitly thought about the different areas of competencies, and you've written down some notes on what you've done. And again, there's loads of help in the website and among the IFOA as to what to do with your PPD. But basically what you need to do is kind of self-service form. Every time you complete a task which you think is relevant for PPD, you write sort of a couple of hundred words just to say what you've done, another couple of hundred words to say what your learning outcomes were, to show that you've developed from it. So for example, the communications, you could say, my learning outcome for delivering a presentation was that I now understand that most people don't understand technical jargon, and I now know that I need to explain it a lot more clearly. So just a couple of notes like that about how you've improved from that. So that's how you record it. When you qualify as a fellow, it's then called CPD, which is continuing professional development, and it's a very similar thing in that you record online all of the activities that you do that help sort of develop your skills as an actuary. Right, and now what I'll do is I'll hand back to Colin, who's going to talk about some of the kind of exemptions and data science as well. So back to you, Colin.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Sally. Yeah, so very briefly, I think Andrew sent through a few questions in advance of this, and one of the questions was about the exemptions from the IFOA's exams if you've got Society of Actuaries exam passes. There's actually a page on this on our IFOA website which outlines what you've got to do. It all depends on when you join the IFOA, whether it was before 31st of July 2019 or after. And there is a time limit on it. So if you join the IFOA before 31st of July 2019 and you've got exam subjects from Society of Actuaries, you can potentially transfer them across. But there's a time limit. You've got until the 31st of December 2022. I don't know, Thomas. I don't know when, if you guys are members of IFOA or not, or as well, if you're not, then this doesn't really matter. But it's certainly worth having a look at the IFOA website about this if you have joined the IFOA, if you're looking to think of coming across. Oops, sorry, I've gone too far. Sorry, this was the slide I was wanting to get. So now, Green, can I just check that this is right? My understanding is you've had some discussions with IFOA already about potentially the possibility of exemptions to the IFOA exams. Is that right? Or now, Green, is that correct in terms of the? I spoke to my colleague Steve Weldon, and he mentioned that he'd had a discussion with UWI last year about the potential for UWI getting exemptions from the IFOA exams. Is that correct, or is it?
Oh, actually, we didn't have a complete discussion, but we have a plan to.
Oh, right.
Discuss.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, so this is a possibility. Right. Okay. Fair enough. Right. So maybe maybe just better to leave this at the moment. So another thing I wanted to discuss was data science. So there's another sort of question that Andrew had about what is the IFOA doing about data science. So the answer is quite a lot. So at the moment we are adding quite a lot of data science content to the IFOA's fellowship exams. So in 2019 we added some sort of machine learning aspects to some of the core statistics exams. We've also 2.5 years ago, we launched the certificate in data science. So there is a sort of data science certificate which is available to all members. It's not part of the fellowship examinations, but it is available to all members. It covers the sort of core aspects of data science and data visualization, machine learning, AI, and this certificate is offered with the Samson Data Science Academy. which is a sort of large, basically University of Southampton, which is a large university in the UK, which is very focused on data science. It's been very popular. I had about I think it's about 550 people go through it since it was launched, from all over the world. But it's really an introduction to the science. It's not really, if you do that certificate, it will give you, a sort of good grounding, but you will not be a data science expert just on that alone. And so we're also looking to launch an SP equivalent data science exam in 2023. So that will sit alongside, life insurance, pensions, general insurance, things like that. So that's. And I suspect that won't be the end of data science for the IFA. I think we view this as a sort of key area for our members, and that it doesn't matter which practice area you work in, data science is becoming more and more important. And so we just see ourselves adding more and more this type of material to our exams, and to and any other educational options that our members want. We're also looking at other things, so not just data science, but we're also looking to launch a climate risk and sustainability course. We're just finalising it at the moment, and we're launching this year in March, and it will be a sort of it's quite a substantial course, sort of 6-week course, going through all aspects of climate change and how that applies to actuarial practice. And I think we see, we'll just continue to add these sort of things as as appropriate. So that's it in terms of the sort of slides that we had. I was really just, if you've got any questions, please ask us, and we'll do our best to answer them.
Or put them in the chat room as well.
Yeah, I'll put them in the chat room if that's easier. Yeah, don't worry, we're not too fierce. We want to, you can ask us anything you want, to be honest. And
Colin, before students think, for their questions, I was just thinking about the previous slide about the data science certificate.
Sure.
I saw that is available for members. Is it for student members also?
Yep. So this any member, it doesn't matter.
Okay.
We deliberately designed it so it was available to anybody. We and that includes that. So we've had people who have still students, up to people who are long retired. So people in their 80s have sat it. Members in their 80s.
Not like me.
Well, no. That's, I think we're all somewhere in the middle, but that's we've certainly had and we deliberately designed it so there's no exam. It's assessed. So it's not just just turn up and you're given it. It's but it's not like sit there with a written exam or anything like that. It's been very popular, but I think the key thing is it is an introduction to data science. It's not straight into programming. You've got to have be able to program in Python or whatever to do the course, even though you do learn quite a lot about Python in the course itself. But
okay, thank you. And there is another thing which I saw from the first to second slide, which we were talking about the fellows in different countries. I saw.
Yeah.
So basically, those were the binationals who had this fellowship, right?
Yes, that's right. Or they're members. So it's not just that. So there's students, associates, affiliates, and fellows as well. So yeah.
Okay, binationals. They could be working anywhere in the world. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, indeed. Yeah. So it's yeah, that's right. So it's.
And also, I think, yeah, that information also gives us that once they have IFOA, and they can be some of the countries, these fellowships are recognized very well. I think that list where you see that those countries.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's absolutely. So yeah, indeed, and yeah. So in basically anywhere in the world you can go in and you can hopefully sort of meet a sort of IFA fellow or somewhere. So it's a very sort of widespread qualification, and we've sort of spent quite a lot of effort trying to make sure it is not completely UK centric. It is a very sort of international sort of profession, and it's been very much a good thing, I think. So.
Thank you. Let us wait. Our students must be ready.
Yeah.
Colin, I had a quick question on one of the slides. You kind of went through quite quickly, and it was around if the university is in a position whereby there's accreditation of the courses.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Could you just cover that again? Yeah.
Sure, yeah, no problem at all. So what happens is that we have accredited universities all around the world, and so we have initially what happens, we have a discussion with them saying, you know, if you want to get an exemption, you know, if you're a stats course, for example, you want to get an exemption, your students want to get exemption from the IFO exam for that stats course, you know, we need to see what is on that course and make sure it's broadly equivalent to the, you know, the syllabus of the equivalent IFOA exam. And so we, you know, we do that, and there's the sort of, I think, form you've got to fill in and all that sort of stuff. But you know, we work with the university and to make sure that, you know, it's sort of the right standard. And you know, so when you know the student reaches a certain level in that exam, then they can potentially get an exemption from the equivalent IFOA exam. And you know, and also there's independent examiners who will assess each sitting to make sure that the exam is of the right standard. So it's not just like a one-off, oh, this is what's in our syllabus and we never speak to them again. It's a sort of regular annual assessment. Sally, do you want to mention anything? Have I covered this correctly? You probably.
Yeah, that's pretty much what we do with the universities. There's also individual exemptions that individual students can apply for. So if the university or the course that they're doing is not part of our accredited or exemption programs, but actually if you think that your university course covers a huge part of our syllabus, then for 3 of our exams, which are CS1, the stats exam, CB1, which is the accounts exam, and CB2, which is the economics exam. So if you've got a degree which you think covers a huge proportion of our syllabus, then you can apply for an individual exemption, and provided there's enough coverage and provided your grades and your results are high enough, then you can get an individual exemption from those as well. If you've taken a master's degree, it may be that if your dissertation meets certain requirements, is a particular length and covers a sort of suitably actuarial topic, then it could be that you get an exemption from one of our SP exams. So it's called SP0, and that will give you an exemption from one of our SP exams, and you then only have to sit one other rather than two in total. So yeah, if your university doesn't have an agreement with us, there might be opportunities to get other individual exemptions as well.
Yeah.
Just the last bit of that. So if a university has, or put it a different way, what's the most subjects that a undergraduate degree at any one of your universities have been able to get exemptions for, just to understand what our aim is if we're aiming for that?
Yeah, a lot of it depends on the university. I mean, if there's a strong sort of actuarial science degree, then there's a good chance, you know, if there's a strong actuarial science degree that's got really good coverage of our exams, lots of sort of actuarial staff, lots of innovative ideas, then I mean, some of our universities have exemptions from the whole lot. So it'll be both CSs, CS1, CS2, CM1, CM2, CB1, and CB2. So you know, there's quite a few universities who have like full-on actuarial degrees will get exemptions from the lot. Universities who kind of start out discussions with us might pick 1 or 2 of the more straightforward exams and get an exemption on those first of all to see how they get on, and then if that's working well, we'll then add more exemptions to it. So a lot of universities might start off with, say, CS1, which is kind of the more basic statistics program, or CM1, which is the more kind of basic actuarial mathematics. So that's often the way to go with the new universities.
We tend not to give exemptions for the SAs and the SPs,
yeah, and
it's quite challenging to get exemptions from this CP exams as well. So yes, it's something like CP1, for example. It's maybe better, I don't know, you can argue this may be better for someone to be in work for a little bit before they do CP1, just because you know, it's very practical, and sort of it helps if you've been in work, but I would say so.
That's a really good point, actually. I know certainly when it was years ago when I started studying, but you get a lot of students coming through with a whole massive exemptions from the earlier core exams, and they go straight into sitting the equivalents of the SPs and CP1, and they really struggled. Whereas sometimes if you've got a couple of years in the office, you've just got a feel for what actuaries do, you've talked to a couple of bosses, you've been to a couple of events and webinars, it just makes it sort of just helps a lot with the understanding of some of the scenarios.
Yeah, from the employer's perspective, I can flag that there are some employers who actually look negatively on someone who has a lot of exemptions because you are, how would I put it? You know the technical, but you don't know the practical.
Yeah.
So someone who has less exemptions but more work experience comes across more attractive from a hiring perspective. So it's a balance in terms of you're trying to get as many as you can, but still be attractive to an employer.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's quite there's not an awful lot of our universities give exemptions to the whole lot. There's some that might just give two or three or something, but yeah, that is a very fair point. A lot of our students who come through will have no trouble at all with the earlier exams, but as soon as they start sitting CP1, it's a completely different type of exam in terms of how it should be answered. And it tends to be CP1's a sticking point for quite a few students, and then actually the essay exam tends to be a bit of a sticking point because it's looking at things at a much more advanced, a much deeper level as well.
Okay. Looking at the questions, there seems to be a couple of questions around the financial support that's offered to students, because the fees for the SOA are currently reimbursed by the Actuarial Foundation of the Society of Actuaries after they've passed. And I believe the IFOA has something similar, but I'm not 100% sure.
I did go and try and find out about this, and I've not been able to get a definitive answer. So perhaps I can find out, Andrew, and then come back. And yeah, so I wasn't able to get a definitive answer on that.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I imagine would membership know about it?
Yeah.
Possibly.
I know there's discounted membership fees for students, and you can, part of it is about showing financial need as well.
Yeah.
But I'm not too sure about paying for exams in the first place.
What's the precedent in work in the Caribbean? Do employers, do they pay the examination fees, or is it up to the student to do that? Or
it varies. So in terms of employers, you have a couple of pension consultants. The main employers tend to be insurance companies of the life type. General insurers are warming up to the fact that actuaries can add value, so they're starting to hire a few, and some of the banks have hired a few as well. And those who, I'd say, understand the importance of the profession will pay for exams, give study packages that are not comparable to the UK, but comparable to the region. But in terms of other employers, effectively, the more non-traditional you go, the more unlikely it is for the employer to support your study program. So it falls to the individual to do that.
Sure. Okay. Because I mean, it varies all around the world. In some countries, they just don't pay exam fees at all, and others, that is just what people do. So it just
And I'll be honest with you, my view on this is, if you want to go far, sometimes you have to do the investment in yourself. So it's great if an employer is happy to do it, but it's for your own benefit, it's your own career. If it means you have to pay these fees to get it done, just like how you're paying to go to university, etc. It's about paying to get the profession. If you did the accounting exams, you'd have to pay, etc. So it's just part and parcel of your journey to a professional qualification.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see what questions are here.
Do you have many of your members who work in kind of non-traditional actuarial fields in the region?
I'll probably put that one to Britta if she can answer.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
I just wondered if you had many members who work in kind of non-traditional actuarial fields.
No, not so much in Jamaica, because part of it is that we don't refer to somebody who's an associate as an actuary.
Mhm.
To be referred to as an actuary in Jamaica, you have to be a fellow. And so there's this perception that they are very, very expensive people to bring into a project. And so the benefits that actuarial input could really provide so many industries is just not there.
Mhm.
Traditionally, people are doing life insurance and pensions, a little bit of health insurance, and very little general insurance. I'm trying very hard to see if we can get the general insurance, the idea of actuaries working in general insurance promoted. But most people, they have to go overseas to get experience. And once they go overseas, they're not coming back because
Yeah.
salaries are so great overseas.
I mean, there's a
So-
challenge with general insurance actuaries in the UK to get into general insurance. And I mean, if we could maybe introduce you to some people on the sort of general insurance side here, because they've, you know, they had initial struggle initially, but I think they gradually become more accepted in general insurance companies in the UK to have actuaries.
I mean, yeah, I'd love to talk to people who can help us to try and get that going. I was coincidentally speaking with the head of a general insurance company last week, and he admitted that he does recognize what actuaries can do for a company. It's not just about valuation reports, it's about helping them understand their business better. But he didn't sound as if he was at the stage yet where he was thinking about hiring somebody in his relatively small company who had actuarial qualifications. Again, I think the price tag that people perceive is attached to actuaries is one of the biggest impediments. So even if it's risk management and just offering a little risk management support, people are less likely to turn to an actuary because they say we can't afford it.
Yeah, it's an argument we hear a lot in non-traditional fields in the UK as well, is the cost of actuaries, not the value of actuaries, the cost of actuaries.
Exactly. The value might far exceed the cost, but people are just
Yeah.
put off by the price tag.
Absolutely.
Call on Abigail, you've raised a question of what is the work environment like in the UK. Can you specify that a bit more, please?
Like just overall, so you know how some places, like, okay, I'm not sure if there's like a small amount of persons who are actually actuaries in the UK. So is it like a close family, or some people like cannot close knit? I don't know if you understand what I mean now.
It's not really. I mean, it's such a big, diverse market. There's just so many actuaries in the UK, and they do so many different things. You know, it's and particularly somewhere like London, which is just, you know, huge and just, you know, vast employer of actuaries. But I mean, my background in life actuary, I was a life actuary in Edinburgh, and it was sort of the sort of actual world is quite small in Edinburgh. Everyone knows everyone in it, and you know, if you like that, it's fantastic. But you know, if you want, you know, that's maybe sort of slightly sort of special. But it's I mean, it's incredibly diverse. You can do all sorts of different things in the UK in terms of actual work, and you know, in the past, people would maybe start in a life company or a pensions company or a general insurer, and they work there forever until they retire. But it's not really like that now. People sort of move between practice areas more than perhaps they did in the past. I think that's a really good thing. So it's not like, well, I'm just going to go and work for the life company. I'll be there forever. Well, actually, you can do different things. So it's I don't know. It's maybe slightly, sorry, apologies, maybe slightly rambling sort of response, but hopefully it's just to say that it is, you know, it's very diverse. What, Sally, what do you think? Do you agree?
Yeah, I started off working for, I've worked for sort of 3 or 4 different actuarial consultancies before I got this job at the IFOA. And they were all kind of slightly different, but all very similar as well. So yeah, the actuarial consultancies, they tended to be sort of mostly actuaries really were the ones that did all of the work, and then there was support staff behind the actuaries, and then anyone kind of moving into like risk benefits and broking was kind of really exciting and new. But they tended to be like big graduate intakes all at the same time. So the company would have like a massive graduate intake of about 50 of us in various different specialisms, various different offices around the country, but we were all kind of a big class together, and a lot of us would study together and form study groups together and kind of keep an eye out for each other in terms of how we were progressing through the exams, even if we worked in different specialisms and different departments. Actually, in the office that I was working in, so in my last employer, it was like a big department that probably had about 50 50 or 60 staff of sort of various different levels, right from kind of partners who are managing the clients to the new graduates who'd come in from university. And at that employer, I was kind of recently qualified actuary, and I had something like 5 or 6 different clients to manage. But on the client teams, there were about 4 or 5 different people, but it wasn't the same people all the time. So I was in different client teams. I ended up working with about 30 or 40 different people with all these different combinations of client teams. So there was always different things to juggle in terms of time management, different characters to work with. But it was all very, we were sort of in it together to help the client, and everyone was developing each other. So if you were newly qualified, you were always working with a nearly qualified student and a new graduate, and you're always trying to develop them to give them tasks to do. So there was a lot of kind of pay it back, pay it forward type. So I'm rambling as well, aren't I? But it was quite a good kind of family atmosphere, I think, where I was. But I know people who work for like really small consultancies where there might only be a couple of actuaries in the whole company, a couple of actuaries and a couple of students, and then that's a very different environment, because you end up getting more interesting challenges because there's only 3 or 4 of you, whereas in my company there was hundreds of people, so there was always a department that could look after some kind of specialist area. So it's it's really diverse depending on the type of company that you end up working for. That's probably not helped you at all. It's probably occasional questions.
I'll just add to that. So a couple of things which I've put in the chat. So within the profession, you do have a lot of social activities that helps with actuaries in different areas to come together. So initially, there is the student SIAS. I have to look up what SIAS stands for, Staple in Actuarial Society. That tends to be more focused on the student level. So they'll have an annual ball, poker night, that kind of stuff, where predominantly the students get together. They have their own debates, functions to encourage socialization amongst the younger groups. And then once you qualify there, naturally, you're going to step up a bit. So you move to the dining clubs. So there are a number of different dining clubs. I think there's one called, is it 40 and out or 30 and out? Once you get to age 30, then you can no longer attend, or it's age 40, you can no longer attend. There's the Argonauts. Yeah, I can't attend anymore, I'm afraid. There's the Argonauts, which used to be for those who work in non-traditional areas, that they'll get together and have a dinner once a quarter. So I've put the links within the chat, a number of those different activities. So even though it's a big profession in the UK, there are many ways in which you can interact. You can have, let's take exams. You have exam markers, and they'll get together to discuss subjects and support the education unit in the work that they do. You'll have working parties on especially topics like climate change. Before climate change became a thing, there was a working party on climate change. So, lots for you to do, not just, I'd say, passing the exams, but it's actually a profession that allows you to be involved in so many different areas, both socially and professionally. And the last thing I'd mention is, in the last couple of weeks, they've launched a diversity, equity, and inclusion program, which is focused on ensuring that our profession is diverse at all levels. And it's one of the few organizations where we have backing data on the diversity of our membership, from students coming in all the way to senior levels, and objectives have been put in place around improving our diversity around the world and what that means, and the events that we do, and how we celebrate all the contributions of all the actuaries within our profession. So it's a very old organization that's very dynamic, is one of the key things to note.
We're unbelievably lucky in terms of the profession, in terms of the number of people that volunteer for the profession, compared to other equivalent professions like the legal profession. You speak to sort of friends or lawyers, and they just wouldn't think about volunteering. But with the actual profession, huge numbers of people volunteer, and not just for a vast range of different things. And you can get so much out of it. You can meet just so many people, and sort of widen your horizons. I'd say. So.
Yeah, there's so many ways to get involved. If there's a particular topic that you feel really, really passionately about and think the profession should be doing something about it, there's always someone who you can talk to see if they can pick it up and start a working party or anything. So it's yeah, very supportive.
It's probably worth mentioning the Queen's List recently, I think one of our members, I'm going to forget the title that they got, but I think it might be an MBE for services that they have done to modeling the impact of the pandemic. And their advice has actually influenced government policy in terms of whether we lock down or not. And they've been interviewed on TV, etc. And so all of that work would have been done within the last 2 years. And its impact has been so important that they've been given one of the highest awards within the UK. So that's what I mean about, it's a very dynamic profession and very real in terms of solving real world problems. Okay, so Sally and Colin, I think I'd committed you or asked for 1 hour of your time. And I just want to check if there are any final questions before we thank you for your fantastic presentation today. What advice would you give students for securing a job?
Oh, gee whiz, yeah, exactly. Yeah, just yeah, I mean, it's it's a really difficult one. Sally, what do you think?
Yeah, I kind of fell into the job actually because I bizarrely enough, I actually originally wanted to be an airline pilot, but there you go, that's another story. I think it's certainly worth being aware of what the profession is doing. I think really know what an actuary is. Think about the kind of specialism that you want to work, what you want to work in. And I ended up getting in because I have a particular passion about pensions and about pension provision, and the fact that people don't understand the importance of it, what it's worth, the fact that pension schemes are often worth a lot more than the company itself. It's such an important thing. And I gave this impassioned speech in my interview and then ended up getting the job. So I think about the practice area that really sort of floats your boat. Obviously sort of look up the companies that you're intending to work for, so you can give intelligent answers to the questions. To be honest, if you have got a couple of exemptions and are aware of the exams, I think that's going to help. One of our, I think it's just one of our exams you can sit. I think it's CM1. You can sit as a non-member as well. So even before you join the profession, you can sit it and see if you can get it. So that might be something to do. I don't know if universities have careers fairs. I mean, we have a careers department so at the IFOA. So that's someone you can get into contact with if you want to know a little bit more about the actual career itself. It might help you prepare for an interview. So that's some sort of vague ideas there. I don't know if you've got anything that you want to add to that at all, Colin.
Yeah, I think it's. I mean, I used to employ lots of people straight from university and did lots of interviews, and it's all about doing your research beforehand, making sure you understand the type of company that you're applying to, what's the sort of things they do. They want to know a lot more about you than just, oh, you got a good degree, oh, fantastic, you got, everyone applying has got a good degree. It's, they have a bit more about you than that, in terms of, do you do volunteering? Do you do lots of other things in your spare time? If it's, as I said, Sally said, if it's something that's a passion for you rather than just a job, if you got really, interested in general insurance or data science or whatever, then maybe look for jobs, in that, or alternatively, just get a job, get through your exams, get yourself to be a qualified actuary, and then you've got a lot, you've got plenty of time then to sort of work out where you want to go. I said, don't feel, just because you've gone to one type of company when you've left university, you've got to stay there. Think about what interests you.
I'll just add to something you've said, Colin, and it's around CV building in advance. So when I was in university, my only focus was on getting a degree. And then I remember my first job interview, and they're like, so what else do you do? And fortunately, I played hockey, I did stuff, I'd say more accidentally than intentionally. But I think with the current competition that we have globally, you have to intentionally build your CV whilst you're in university. So the charity work, the sports, joining the Caribbean Actuarial Association as a student member, that shows you definitely want to do this profession. Leadership in community, in church, all of that adds up to make you an interesting candidate that's worthy of an interview. That's only to get you to the interview. And that's how high the bar is. Being, having a first-class degree is good, but it's not enough in many situations. So spend some of your university time building a CV that captures the things you're interested in and more.
Yeah, sure.
I have one question came to my mind now. Can I with the interest of time, I'm not sure.
Yeah, go away.
Okay. How conveniently one can move, a fellow can move to teaching field in UK once they have IFOA, especially to university teaching?
I mean, there's different levels of it. There's, so we've got fellows that maybe do a day a week at a university and will lecture, to getting a job actually in the university. So there's about 130 actuaries in the UK who work in education in a number of different universities. As I said, some will work to different levels. It certainly is possible. There's loads of universities in the UK that offer actuarial sciences degrees. So there is a possibility. But
the ones I've worked with who've been, because we have volunteers who are our examiners, so they'll mark our exams, they'll write the exam questions, or they'll be chief examiner in particular subjects. A couple of my chief examiners have gone on to lecture at universities on a part-time basis and then move to a full-time basis to get to get a bit of experience. So that's another possible way in.
Yeah.
Okay, while even in their career, is it something required for them to move in their promotions and all, like a PhD or something that looks in UK? Even for IFOA fellow, get easily as par with other PhDs, get promoted into all categories from lecturer, senior lecturer, and professor, a sort of? Do they have to do again compulsory doing the doctor of philosophy or something? I wanted to understand,
I don't know many people that have done. There are some people that have done PhDs, but I don't know that many. I think most of them tend not to have PhDs. And again, I'm not sure the split between research and teaching. I think whether they're actually doing research as well as I'm not 100% sure. I'm sure I can find out or introduce you to somebody who would know a lot more about it if you'd be interested. But yeah, it's probably a wee bit too specialist a question.
Yeah, I think I know one student who did do a PhD, just took some time out to do a PhD because that was something that he wanted to do. Did a bit of teaching as well. It was actually at DCU, I think. Did a bit of teaching, got his doctorate, and then sort of moved back into consulting. There's actually somewhere nice and exotic overseas, I think, in some fantastic job somewhere. So he didn't want to be an academic for the rest of his life, but he just suddenly felt really passionate about a particular subject. But yeah, I don't know people who do that.
Okay, thank you. That was.
I think most actuarial departments have a combination of actuaries and your statistician might not be an actuary. They might just be a specialist in statistics or applied statistics. So it's the crossover with the profession that you tend to find. And I think it varies from university. Some are loads of actuaries, others are one or two, but loads of other crossover specialists as a result.
Definitely.
Oh yeah. I don't know, a student didn't ask that, I was waiting. Maybe they would like to hear the last thing, something like, the highest paid area in UK for them. I was actually eagerly waiting them to ask, but I am tempted. I waited until last minute. Okay.
Sadly, it's not education, but yeah.
So maybe I wanted to change now, my field.
I think it varies from experience. I think when general insurance was scarce, they probably got paid the most. But now I would argue people who specialize in pension de-risking, but on the insurance side, not the consulting side, because effectively they're creating insurance companies or specialist areas around some very significant annuity transactions, can get really well rewarded. But generally, whatever aspect of the profession you go into, it's one of the top 5% paying professions in the world. So you'll be okay. It's the best way to put it.
Okay, so
You might even be wealthy relative to where you are, but you'll be okay.
The day I qualified, the president of the day, I actually worked with him because he worked with my employer at the time, and he delivered this speech and he sort of talked about the fellowship, and he said, oh, it's amazing because it's basically this ticket to work anywhere in the world. And then he said at the end of his speech, actually the best thing about being an actuary is you're never going to starve.
okay. I was, worrying now. I was thinking I would have got this advice, when I was young.
Okay.
So, was this okay? Was this helpful in terms of we covered the right things you wanted us to cover, or?
I would like to hear from students. Of course, it is going to be very much helpful. And so a lot of information was shared here, and I'm seeing a lot of links came.
Good.
And also, particularly, I got an idea. And and also we had a plan to initiate the discussion as it is from the university so that we can see what courses, our students get exempted. And this is so much, useful and helpful when students plan, especially sometimes for this generation we keep on telling the things, so it is very, very, very important. They must be seeing opportunities. This is very important. Great. And interesting for them. Should be for them.
Well, Sally and Colin, thanks. You've delivered exactly what they've asked for, so that's good. And I wish when I was there sitting at UWI, I'd seen this, because I'd have probably saved 1 or 2 years in terms of my study if I'd moved over back then, rather than waiting a bit later. So thank you ever so much for giving us your time. The recording that we've made, just to flag, there is another actuarial program at UWI, which is in Trinidad. And so we plan to share the recording with them, so their students will also benefit from it as well. But thank you very much. And on behalf of the students and the staff, thanks, and have a lovely evening.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Great.
Okay, so before you guys go away, I just wanted to say on behalf of the club members, I wanted to thank both our presenters, but also you, Mr. Long, for doing whatever you did to arrange this for us and make it possible for us to be here and have this session today. It was definitely very helpful, and I'm sure I'm not alone in that sentiment. But also I'd like to thank our own head of department, Dr. Panakala, as well as our faculty advisor, Ms. Hay, for being here, because you both chimed in with some very important information as well, and I'm sure that has helped us. So we just want to say thank you. We appreciate your time and the sacrifice that you've made. We're very aware of the time difference in the UK. So we want to say thank you very much. We appreciate it.
All right, thanks, Nicole.
Thank you,
thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you all. Take care. Thank you.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.
Okay, so for our members now, we didn't get to properly welcome you guys to the meeting today. So thank you for everyone who stayed. I know that the third years have a very important meeting right now. So if you're a third year and you still stayed back, thank you so much. We have a couple of announcements, so I'm going to hand over to Lamar for him to make those.
All right, so good afternoon, guys. Good afternoon. So let's start with our jerseys. I know you guys have been waiting for them since last year, and soon enough, the forms will be sent out and you can purchase them then. Secondly, our Delta activity, the Ludo game, will continue this Sunday, so you guys can prepare your teams and prepare for it. Make the best house win, right? And lastly, our donation drive for the elderly home, we have sent out the post up, and you guys can start donating the stuff. If you're donating monetary funds, we can send you the account information if you don't have it already. And as for items, you guys can start dropping them off on a Friday, right? So for more information on where to drop them off, you can inbox Javine, and she'll give you information on that. That's it, guys.
So yes, so yes, guys, I just want to hype you guys up more for the bully competition. If we met the last point standings, White Knights not all that leading.
Sorry,
Purple
what were all
Dragons
that?
ain't all that losing. And okay, I don't think you guys know the points, like how it's going to work. So just to encourage you guys to go and play for your house. Each person, when you win, you get 50 points. When you come second, 30, and third, 15, and then you get 5 extra points for every kill you get, so you know, spice up the game. So you know, there's going to be 3 different matches. So if on the end up, if one house win all 3 matches, 150 points, that you win Delta, basically. So make sure you go and rep your house, guys. I just want to say once again, thank you for coming out to the meeting. I hope you guys all benefited from the information. And yeah, have a great day, guys. Love y'all. Oh, and make sure you sign the membership form. Nico had sent it multiple times in the chat. Ensure you all sign it.
Right. Not membership prep, attendance, right? Right.
That.
I just sent you one last time, guys.
Because remember, you need it for your membership points. So make sure you fill out the form.